o'clock. We have just a few seconds left. And our speaker today, I will introduce, is coming to us from Montclair State University, which is in New Jersey. His name is Dr. Danlin Yu, and I heard about him from my colleague, UFGeog, over there, walking in right now. And Dr. Yu has a Ph.D. in geography from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and he's a geographic information scientist, spatial data scientist, locational strategist, quantitative urban geographer, and an environmental sustainability modeler. He has been teaching at Montclair State University since 2005, and his interests are in the fields of urban and regional development, advanced spatiotemporal data analysis, and geographic information science. So he's going to be talking to us about China today and the varying effects of accessing high-speed rail system on China's county development. And so this is a topic of interest to some people, and we look forward to hearing what Dr. Yu has to tell us about that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mosa, for the warm introduction, and thank you all for your interest to this talk. This is a research I've been conducting. Well, it's ongoing research I've been conducting since 2019. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me get this going first. Now share my screen. Mike, you have to allow me to share screen.
Does anyone else need a sheet or form? I don't. Okay.
Sorry, I'm working on.
Okay. Yeah, we've been changing authorities like back and forth.
I'm glad I can dump this on Mike. So glad.
Anyways, before I can share the screen, I just talk a little bit about the background story of doing this research. I started to have this idea back in 2018, thinking about the high-speed rail system in China that was developing really fast and it provides very convenient transportation modes in China. Well, previously taking a train from Beijing to my hometown is oftentimes take 24 hours, okay, entire day. So we call them just like my hometown's in Hunan province in central China. We oftentimes get on, well, and sleep a light over, and then get off the second day at the property the same time. But nowadays with the high-speed rail, it takes about 6 to 8 hours. 6 to 8 hours. That's fantastic. And because of the high-speed rail, a lot of other things becomes possible. Now I'm able to share. So let me share this. Share the screen. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we are.
Yes. Good. That's good. All right. Okay. So starting from this interest, well, we developed a variety of different methods. Well, I'm as Dr. Mosa mentioned, I am a advanced spatiotemporal data modeler myself. Well, I like to explore the data as a geographer. I like to explore the data here and there to see how the data varies across the space. But later on, I was inspired by an economist, and he mentioned that not only vary over geography, but it also varies over time. So have you ever considered to combine geography and time together? That's back in 2009. I started thinking about it. Okay, and then in 2018, I found this opportunity to have my hands on a set of county data, socioeconomic data, and my hands on the high-speed rail HSR data set in China. I got very excited. I feel like this is probably the opportunity I can combine the thoughts, both thoughts together to do something interesting. So this is one of the research topic and the research result from this thought process. This was a collaborative research with colleagues back in Ming University. Today's topic about the varying effect of assessing high-speed rail system on China's county development is one of three research that we are doing right now. Two of them has already been published, including this one that I'm going to deliver to you. The first one was published in Transportation Research Record, I think, Part B, the methodological research. This paper was published in Land Use Policy. It's already published. So if anybody is further interested in the full research, I will be able to send the published paper to you afterwards, of course. But now let's get back to the story to talk about this using the geographic weighted panel regression analysis to research the varying effects of accessing high-speed rail system in China on the county's development. Back to this research. This is what I'm going to do. I'll give you an outline, pretty much just a schedule, abstract of what my research really is about. My purpose, apparently, is to investigate the HSR construction, how the construction of the HSR system, right, the entire system, will have an impact on counties' economic development. Okay. Not many people have this rich amount of data, at least back in 2019, at the county level to conduct research to explore this question. And the second purpose is apparently to advance my interest, my primary interest at that time is for spatial temporal data analysis, advanced that particular direction. And also wants to analyze the spatial heterogeneity of the high-speed rail systems influence on economic development, on social development, on many other aspects. Okay. My research contribution, as I outlined in my published papers, that there will be empirical evidence for HSR's wider economic impact, the so-called WEI, the wider economic impact, and not just the direct economic impact that when you have an HSR system there, you will have a heightened or increased economic performance. Not just that, there are other benefits that the construction of HSR brought. Okay. Gonna be outlined that in later talk. And to provide empirical support for future spatial distribution of HSR. The HSR construction in China was quite different from, I think it's quite different from many other places because this is a governmental-led project. The central government has infused a huge amount of fund to support its construction, and of course also have leadership and guidance on its construction, especially regarding where a specific station, the HSR station, should be deployed. That the central government has a lot of say in this regard. Okay. The data we're going to be collecting and analyzing are 2008 to 2015 county level economic development data. I was very fortunate to get my hand on that set of data through a colleague and a collaborator in the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Geography. I did some GIS analysis to the so-called proximity to HSR system. I will detail that later on, and those of you, well, for those of you geographers who are familiar with the GIS, it should not be too hard of a procedure to conduct. And then I proposed for the first time well, not the first time I would have to say, but the first time I have explored in such a detail the new method called the geographically weighted panel regression analysis. I have been working with geographically weighted regression analysis since 2003. I've been working with that particular method. I've been talking with the author of that method, Dr. Stuart Fotheringham, and his colleagues since 2004, and I've been publishing quite a few papers on that regard. But since 2019, when my intention was brought from just geographic space to both geographic space and the temporal space, I started to explore this method. And this is the first paper that I explored into such a depth of how this method should be implemented and how it should be used to tackle a particular problem. And I'm glad to present this result in this paper to share it with you. Okay. My results are quite interesting, apparently, and I was excited and found in a very general sense, overall, the counties have an HSR station within, have a 2.7% higher per capita GDP than counties without. And areas within HSR stations are sparse. Proximity to HSR system usually is positively related with the county development. But in areas where HSR stations are dense, especially in the eastern coast area of China, which are relatively developed, the impact, the proximity to HSR systems impact on the county's economic development are usually not significant. And also by compare which particular factors, investment, neighbor participation, neighbor availability, etc., and analyzing those particular attributes, those characters or variables impact on county development, we found that there is a potential linkage between the construction of HSR system and the wider economic effect. We'll get to that. So my conclusion gets to the construction of the HSR contributes directly to less developed regions, but indirectly to more developed regions. And apparently, this is one of the points I really want to make, that advanced geospatial analytical approaches have a wider range of applicability. As a matter of fact, UFGeog and I were conducting a research using the geographic dependent regression right now, trying to investigate how the pandemic has an influence or spatiotemporally varying influence on the crime rate in a variety of metropolitan areas here in the United States of America. We'll see how it goes, but I'm excited to see what it will come out with it. Now get to my purpose in detail. The construction of HSR and the economic development effect has been, don't get me wrong, it's not something that's new. There are a lot of research on it already, but normally economists, economic geographers agrees that there are two effects. The direct effect oftentimes refers to apparently shorter travel time, meaning lower transportation costs and a better integrating regional market and increased neighbor mobility, and also increase or heighten the science and technological development to make the economy, local economy developments better. On the other hand, there is also this so-called wider economic impacts. Basically, I think it was proposed in a 2016 paper by a transportation geographer. I forgot his name, but it's in my paper. Basically refers to improved investment environment, because the construction of the HSR system will improve the investment environment, improve agglomeration effect on market, neighbor, and capital, hence further enhance local development. But it was also found in previous research that the construction of HSR has a diminishing marginal effect on local economic development, meaning the HSR's wider economic effect increases while direct effect decreases, especially as the density of HSR reaches a certain level. Right? That's the kind of ideas and kind of research. As a matter of fact, not kind of research. It's kind of ideas, points, topics that have been floating around in the research of HSR and economic development. And well, in this regards, my paper will try to verify all of these effects to see if they are indeed true in China's case. Okay. Well, the traditional approach, many of the traditional approaches uses the different measuring mechanisms, okay? Using different methods, especially the models, using the linear, non-linear econometric models, regression models. Those are the traditional ones. And although there are a few papers which considers the spatial effect of geographic data, not many. Well, as geographers, of course, we are the first thing it comes to our mind is that if you do any kind of analysis, have you considered their spatial effect? Well, sometimes we like to say the first law of geography, when everything is related with everything else, the closer things are more related than distant ones. Have you considered that? Most economists or econometricians would probably not thinking too much on that regard, but we geographers do. Okay? We geographers, because data are collected over geographical areas. A traditional approach, if you do not consider the geographic effect, the spatial effect, it might cause bias or inefficient results when analyzing geographic data. As a matter of fact, many geographers also have a statistical background, has attested to that. So I propose this, well, not I propose, basically just reinforce the geography is important by proposing the spatial data analysis that can recognize the spatial effect of data collected over geographic units, and but not just by mindlessly incorporating spatial effect into my model. I also distinguish between the global method, which incorporates spatial effects but produces just an average result, treats everything is the same everywhere. Okay? But we do incorporate spatial effect, the spatial autocorrelation, the spatial heterogeneity into a model. And the local method. Well, the local method incorporates spatial effects, but also produce location-specific results. Now, 5 years ago, I would tell you that local methods oftentimes produce better results than global methods. But 5 years later, now I'm never going to say that again, because both methods, both models serve their own purpose. Okay, an average purpose, a locational specific purpose, all will be useful, or will be actually quite powerful in their relevant context of explaining things. Okay? So the research purpose. And also wants to explore the spatial heterogeneity of China's high-speed rail system, the impact on regional development. Well, that is apparently, I'm leaning towards the local method. Not saying that the local method is superior, but under this context, just like I said, the local method provides a more detailed pattern, more detailed explanation, description of what I want to know, how the accessibility or proximity to the HSR system will impact on the local economic performance. That's my purpose. I wanted to explore that. I want to see that because nobody has done that before. Trying to see how the HSR's construction spatial difference. There's got to be some different effect, apparently. You cannot really expect that I construct an HSR in the New York metropolitan area will have the same economic effect as I construct an HSR effect station in Gainesville, right? It is just unimaginable if you're thinking that they're going to be producing the same amount of effect. So the same thing in China. China and the United States of America have about the same vast area, and China is even more complex in terms of geography, terrain, etc., etc. And also we found the background. The background is actually the distribution of the HSR stations in China back in 2017. But here I present the map here, the map of the HSR station, the distribution in China in 2017. Now it's 2021, 4 years later. Actually, the situation is much more different now. It's more dense. You have more stations all over the map now than 4 years ago. But since our research stops at 2015, so this map should suffice. Okay, as you can see, most of the HSR station and routes are in the eastern coast China, which is understandable because that part is the more advanced, more developed, economically speaking, China than the central and western part of China. So apparently there is a priority of collecting these places first before we move gradually westwards. It's understandable. And HSR's impact on local economy, apparently, like I just mentioned, might be and have a higher probability of this might be different in different places. And so in this regard, I would deem if I want to explore this particular difference, locational difference, models supporting varying coefficients might provide more detailed explanation and might suit well in this purpose. What is this research's contribution to the general community, scholarly community of transportation geography, economic geography, and geographers as a whole? Regional geography apparently is the construction of the high-speed rail system in China and its impact on regional development. Or you can actually extend that to not just the high-speed rail, but the large amount of infrastructure investment, how this will be impacting on the local economic development. Okay, that's my contribution. That's my contribution in this regard. The construction or a large amount of infrastructure investment, how they will contribute to local economic development. Well, the huge investment in this construction carries not only economic meaning. Right? In China, it was never just an economic consideration. It's never really about that earn more money. As a matter of fact, HSR system never really earned a single penny before 2018. Okay? There is constant loss from a pure economic perspective. However, often economic gains, HSR's construction actually also carries a policy guidance for boosting the less developed region, the economic development, instead of just to provide a more convenient way to connect the more developed regions together. It also carries a policy guidance that the central government is going to infuse more money into less developed regions, although the construction started in the east, but it's gradually moving towards the west. And that to see if this movement would bring significant amount of economic significance or economic development in less developed regions. And location choice, especially of the routes and the stations, often balance between economic and the social development. This is something not really came out from our model, but mostly from our investigation and interviews with the local officials. I have done quite intensive amount of interviews from 2018 to 2019. I was about to do it in 2020, but everybody knows what happened in 2020, so I was not able to do that. To talk to local officials and individual citizens about how HSR would impact on their life and the local economic development, etc., etc. But in any cases, this study was done before I finished those interviews. Okay, so it just stops there. It intends to explore the detailed local patterns of the influence of the HSR on local economic development. So what do we want to do? Provide a very detailed pattern, how it influences local economic development. And the results, I believe, in our research, we believe our research contributes not just to only how the future HSR construction in China should be, and not only in China. As a matter of fact, we all heard that President Biden says that we're going to be investing $3.9 trillion into infrastructure construction. Well, this research might actually provide some support to that kind of decision, and also projected that demands, more detailed local pattern, especially give a more detailed local pattern, give decision maker a better idea of how the investment or infrastructure construction should be deployed all across the nation, considering both China and the United States of America are vast nations, right? It's a huge amount of area and very different terrain, very different geography. This research might be able to provide some guidance or shed some light in those regards. Of course, whether or not it will be true, it's left to be seen. Now, let's actually get to the action, how the data is analyzed, is assembled and analyzed. Get to the probably the more interesting part, I would say, the data and the methodology part. The data, this is the data collected over 2008 and 2015, the county level socioeconomic development data. The acronyms here are a little bit vague, so I need to explain them to you. The GDP per capita, GDP-PC, is relatively straightforward. It's GDP per capita of a county, of a specific county. But as you can see here, it's not 16.30 dollars or yuan. Not really. It's actually the unit is, I think it's 10,000. I think the unit is 10,000. So don't be surprised by the maximum, which is a huge number. I was actually quite surprised by that. It's not 1,000. Let me see. I think it's 10,000, if I'm not mistaken. But I have to double check. Either 10,000, 1,000. Anyway, the maximum number is quite surprising now. The GDP per capita, as you can imagine. I actually went to check and found out it's not really so surprising. It's in one of the richest county in China, and not far away from Shanghai. So not really that surprising. URB represents urbanization rate. It's a very simple measurement. The people who live in the urban area as a ratio of people who lives in the entire county. And the maximum number is not surprising either, because we included Beijing, Tianjin, and Shanghai into those calculation, and their urbanization rate is almost always 100%. The LPR represents labor participation rate, specifically how people age 15 about to age 60 or 59, the portion of the people in this age range, that is our labor participation rate. How many people in this age range are participating in the work or have a job compared to the total number of people in this age group. Okay, I think this number, the maximum number is, I think this is a typo. It's definitely not a 5, by the way. It cannot be 5 if it's a portion. I think it might be just a 0. It might be a typo. The FAI represents fixed asset investment. It's a governmental investment number. It has been, I think I did not do any modification on that. The revenue, local revenue, is how much money the local government receives from tax, from other venues, from the direct investment from the central government, etc., etc. The EXP represents the expenditure, the financial expense of the local government, of the county government. The STUD, actually, STUD is a very interesting factor here. It represents the number of students in elementary and secondary schools, right? It is supposed to be a potential factor, but it also suggests if there are a lot of students in elementary and secondary schools, for China's situation, well, that basically means they are training labor forces from other parts. Well, parents needs to be home more to take care of the kid, and the kid cannot really legitimately participate in any kind of a job, even job training in that regard. So larger amount of students in the elementary and the secondary schools, from middle school to high school, meaning there is going to be a shortage in labor forces. That's later what we found out. The pop thing, of course, represents the population density. Okay, the IND represents the industrial ratio. I think it's the industrial. It's not a ratio. Industrial structure. Right. This industrial structure has been, I believe, it has been constructed, has been converted. The last three How it was converted, I have to double check on my paper, but let's not dwell on that. But the last three are the interest of today. Okay, the last three: the distance, the travel time, and HSR impact. Those are the measures I have developed through a GIS analysis of how to measure the proximity or accessibility of a county to the HSR system. So I'm going to explain these three methods. The not three methods. The three indicators or three variables in more detail in the next slide. Okay. The proximity to HSR. As a matter of fact, I've developed 4 different measures of the proximity measures to the HSR system. The first is the very simple, straightforward one. The econometrics used very often. That's called the binary measure, meaning if the county has an HSR station within, the market has 1. If it does not have an HSR station within, then the market has 0. That's very simple. We're not using the HSR route. The reason is very simple, because accessing HSR system is through accessing the HSR stations. Even if there is a route, a huge long route, the railway crosses through this county, but if there is no HSR station, crossing through this county will not really have a direct impact on this county's economic performance or social development or et cetera, because you cannot directly access the HSR service through the route along. I have seen some researchers, scholars using the route, the presence of the route as an indicator to for accessibility or proximity to HSR system. I feel like that is a violation in the geographer's eyes, anyways. But apparently, most of those research are not done by geographers, so they are forgiven. Second is a very simple measure. It's called the bird flying distance, or just the Euclidean distance. It's a straight line distance from the geometric center of the county to the nearest HSR station. And this distance was logarithm transformed. It was transformed because of the large values. But to do this, apparently everybody in this room who have taken a GIS class probably will be able to do it right away. Right? You do a spatial join. A spatial join would be more than enough to get that. The second is network travel time measure. Again, it's another GIS performance. So network travel time through network analysis based on different years roads network. And from the geometric center, we'll still have to use the geometric center to the nearest HSR station. Also, this measure was logarithm transformed as well to make sure the relationship is the median. The third one is a slightly more complicated, I would say. It's so what do we call the impact of the HSR station measure? The reason why I developed this is by the demand of econometrician. Actually, he proposed to me that we econometricians have been using this presence and the absence measurement of HSR accessibility or proximity for a long time. Do you have any better idea to also incorporate the econometrician's vantage point of HSR accessibility to HSR service? I said, well, you know what? I'm a geographer. I do GIS. I play around with data. So let's try. And I come up with this so-called impact of the HSR station measure. It goes, like I said, it's a little bit complicated because it involves 3 steps. First, for any county having at least an HSR station within, yes, trust me, there are counties which have more than 1 HSR stations within, especially in the East Coast. Okay, then we designate this county's impact being 1, okay, binary 1. Also, we measure the distance from the geometric center to the nearest HSR stations in this county. Right? How many counties are having a HSR station within? And we measure the geometric center from that county to the nearest HSR station, and we average these distances and mark this average as the benchmark distance or the basic distance. Once we get that, any other county will measure its distance from the geometric center to the nearest HSR station as a D as the distance, and count DI as the HSR's impact on the ith county, but not yet done yet. As a matter of fact, we use the DI to divide by the D bench. See? use DI to divide by the bench. Once we get that, if the DI divided by the D bench is equal to or more than one, we designate the HSR's impact of that county to be 1 as well, although it does not have an HSR station within. If it's less than 1, well, the percentage will become its impact, will become that county's impact. That's how it was calculated. That's how it was calculated. It's a little bit convoluted, but if you have a fair good knowledge of GIS, it's still very easy to do. Although the explanation requires some explanation. Okay, all of those were down at GIS, not GIS Pro. Spatial join, the origin destination network analysis. For those of you who have taken the courses for GIS, you probably know how to do that. But this is the measurement of the proximity to HSR. The next is the proposed geographically weighted panel regression. I'm not planning to spend a lot of time to talk about what geographically weighted panel regression is in detail. As long as you have some idea of what geographically weighted regression is, you probably should be able to understand this concept pretty well without exploring it into too much detail there. Okay. It is an extension from the cross-sectional geographically weighted regression, okay, from cross-sectional data to panel data, to longitudinal data, if you are ecologist. Okay, it is based on the kernel density to assign geographical weights and generate local samples and estimate the coefficient using those local samples. Okay. Well, the kernel density function is the key here, because the kernel density function will be able to realize this distance decaying attribute that we often marked as the first law of geography, because it can be used to generate such a distance decaying, to mimic such a distance decaying attribute of geographic data. We actually can use the kernel density not only mimic the process, but also to generate the geographical weights as well, and assign those weights to neighboring units. Hence, we can generate a local sample for local estimation. That's the beauty of geographic weighted regression. But apparently, there is a problem. How are you going to determine what size would be sufficient when you want to create a local sample? In the traditional or cross-sectional geographic weighted regression, we oftentimes use either cross-validation or the archaic information criteria to obtain the so-called optimal local samples. Okay. Once we got to the optimal local sample, we can do the estimation. We can do the estimation. The estimation could be, if it's cross-section data, just regular least squared regression, or if it's panel data, as in our case, could be least square panel regression. It needs the square panel regression as well. All of those work are down in R with the package SPLM, SPDP, and the scripts are written by me. Currently, UFGeog and students are using it to do the crime analysis. But methodology is very interesting, although I have the tendency to talk a lot about the methodology here, but I don't think the time is enough. So let's jump into the results and the discussion. Okay, jump into the results discussion. First, the results are, well, apparently for their presence and absence of the HSR station, I do not really do the geographically weighted regression. Instead, we just do a very simple panel regression. Okay, one is just a non-spatial panel regression. Non-spatial panel regression. Pay attention to just this factor. That it shows it's significant. It's non-spatial, it's just a regular panel regression. It's significant, okay, and quite significant as a matter of fact, quite significant. However, when we did a Lagrange multiplier test, which is basically used to test whether or not the residual of the regression is spatial autocorrelated, we found it is. It's actually the residual of the regular regression is highly spatially autocorrelated. and we found that the lax specification, meaning the spatial autocorrelation of the residual, is mainly a result of a spatially autoregressed dependent variable, is the major contributor here. Okay, so based on this test, Lagrange multiplier test, we did a spatial panel regression. I found out, well, you know what, it is still significant, but comparing to the non-spatial regression, the t-value dropped, and also the estimate almost happened, right? Almost happened here. So, well, we settle with this because more often than not, we found our spatial panel regression produces a more reliable, less biased, and more efficient estimate than non-spatial regression models, which has been improved in many cases, both empirically and theoretically. So we stick with this particular number, 0.27. We'll convert it eventually to how I come up with the result that the 2.7% of higher per capita GDP than counties which does not have an HSR within. Well, the most important results came from the geographical weighted regression. The geographical weighted regression, geographical weighted panel regression, right? We did 3 geographically weighted panel regression models because I have 3 different measures other than the presence and absence. The first one is the road network travel time. Well, as you can see here, the map shows very clearly the relationship is indeed varying, and the varying a very regional pattern, a very regionally differentiated pattern. In that westernward it goes, okay, or southernward it goes, or in this part, well, in other words, if you are not familiar with the China's economic map distribution, those are often the less developed regions, relatively less developed regions. Okay, these parts are highly developed regions. This is Beijing. This is Beijing, Tianjin. These 2 cities here. Shanghai is right here. Shanghai is right here. And this is Shandong province, Zhejiang province, Jiangsu province, Zhejiang province. Those are really rich provinces in the eastern coast of China. And we found that for those areas, for the relatively rich areas, the HSR's impact can be measured by travel time is not of that significant. It's not that significant. But westwards or towards the south to the relatively underdeveloped regions and in the northern part of the country, seems like it has a relatively higher influence. Okay, this is for the travel time. The distance measure shows relatively slightly different pattern, but not that different. If you compare, of course, at individual counties, it will be very different. But if you check these 2 maps, you will find it not that different. Well, the biggest difference actually comes with the impact measure. The impact measure only captures the highly significant impact in Tibet, in the western part of Tibet, western central part of Tibet. Not many other places. Although you can still see the pattern do not change that drastically, especially considering the eastern coast counties. All 3 maps shows that the HSR, proximity to HSR service, are not really that important in the eastern coast counties, but are relatively more important in less developed regions. That's the result from our geographically weighted panel regression analysis. Okay, this is it. Well, also we did a map for the fixed asset investment. The reason why I do that is because I want to see whether or not something else is working to promote local economic development at the county level, other than the HSR, the proximity to HSR, or the convenience to access HSR. Well, I found out that the investment, the fixed asset investment, which is usually from the central government, from local government as well, found out that, as a matter of fact, the fixed asset investment are a significant contributor to local economic development in the Eastern Coast area. And we had this idea after discussion and interviews with local officials. We had this idea that we present in our paper that the heightened fixed asset investment in most regions are an indirect result from the construction and the deployment of HSR stations there, because we saw opportunities. Okay, we saw opportunities. So the direct effect has been abated, but the indirect effect, the wider effect, increases. So the benefits are not just seeing how well a particular direct access to the HSR service would bring to the local economy, but also what the indirect effects would be, what the accessibility or proximity to the HSR services would bring to local economic development other than the direct booster. This is our, well, apparently this is our hypothesis. We believe the linkage exists in this regard, right? Come to our result and discussion. The global model using the presence and absence shows it's not when we do not control for spatial effects, it might overestimate the HSR's impact. But after controlling for spatial effects, we found the counties with an HSR station within have an average 2.7% higher per capita GDP than counties without. But the local model is the more interesting part there. The different measure of HSR proximity have different results, of course, but all agrees to three general conclusions. First, proximity to HSR system is positively related with the county's economic development. And based on our data transformation, we found 10% increase in distance or traveling time per capita GDP, a decrease, 10% decrease in distance or traveling time. The per GDP capital of the county oftentimes increased from 1.2% to 5.8%. Second, we found proximity to HSR system has direct impact on local development while the HSR stations are sparse, but more indirect impact, the wider economic impact, was where stations are dense in the eastern part. Okay. For regions with a higher density of HSR stations, we kind of speculate or contend that capital investment has more explicit or more direct impact on local development. Okay. This, we argue, is a manifestation of HSR's WEI, the wider economic impact. Okay. Come to our conclusion. The construction of HSR system has significant social and economic impact for less developed regions, which I think agrees with what the government of China intended to do, or model actually supports in this regard. But infrastructure is the foundation for developing less developed regions. Oftentimes, infrastructure does not really have a very immediate effect. The infrastructure's effect oftentimes are long-lasting and gradual instead of immediate. Well, but our model shows that it could be, well, although we do not have a temporal variation model here, which I'm doing with it right now, but our model does not show that. But it shows that it does have some kind of direct impact to less developed regions. But for the more developed regions, the HSR's impact transfers from direct to wider impact. Okay. The construction of HSR station will continue to support China's balanced regional economic development strategy in the near future. I think that's the basic idea behind China's determination to invest in the construction of HSRs. And this entire research also demonstrates that spatial data analysis should be applied anywhere spatial data is used. This is a point that I have been advocating since I was a professor in Montclair State University, and in a variety of different occasions in my research as well. At a global level, it could reduce potential bias and inefficient modeling results, but only the local spatial data analysis approach are able to provide detailed local analysis, provide detailed pattern, provide detailed local information. And because we all know that spatial data are special and spatial data analysis approaches are especially so in this regard. And if we apply spatial data analysis to any of the data that is collected over the geographic space, we will ultimately find something as quite different, quite new, and quite surprising, and apparently quite exciting as well. Thank you all. This is my presentation today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yu. Are there
Yes.
questions from anyone here or on Zoom?
Hello, this is
Yes.
Tim. This is Tim Fick.
Yeah.
Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Yu. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
I enjoyed your presentation. I like the combination of using the weighted regression and the localized approach with panel data. I found it very interesting. A couple of questions. When you were running your model, before you ran the model, did you pre-screen any of the data to look for multi-collinearity?
Yes.
Like questions. Okay, because I noticed some of the variables didn't come in significant in the final model. So I guess you eliminated those. Is that correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, thank you, Tim, for your it's very acute observation here. I did a variety of preliminary data analysis before I performed the final panel analysis and the geographic weighted panel regression. It's a common practice, as I always teach my students to do. First, I check the linearity, okay, to make sure that the relationship is indeed linear. So to do that, I have to do transformation. Logarithm transformation and the exponential transformation has been applied there to make sure it's linear. Second, I did the second, of course, the multicollinearity test. The test they're using the VIF number. I did not report here. I don't think I reported in my paper either, but I still remember because the data set is still being used. None of the VIF numbers are over. I think the maximum number is about like 5 point something.
Yeah,
none of them are over 10.
Yeah, you're good. You're good with that, no doubt. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I just was curious because that's something I normally do when I start out looking with a large data set. And the other question I had in your paper, and I'm really curious, I'd like to read it anyway as soon as I could. But did you do an analysis of the air structures and to see if there were any localized, like local moraine, significant local spatial autocorrelation, or any types of even global moraine or daces or Geary ratios or something of that nature? But
Yes.
You did test that. Okay.
No, Tim, I didn't specifically calculate the Moran's eye for the residual, but I did the similar test. This is the similar test, the Lagrange multiplier test, which is more robust than the Moran's eye. I didn't do a local Moran's eye test though in that regard because it does not serve the purpose for the global model here. But I do believe there is going to be a huge amount of significant patches of local or spatial autocorrelation in the residuals and those independent variables.
It would be kind of cool to look where the hotspots are for some of that and to see if there's any implications of those hotspots for the local moraine. That would be kind of a cool analysis.
Yeah, that will absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah, you're spot on with the need to look at this as both from a global and a localized type of modeling approach. So I applaud you. Very good. Nice work. Anyways, that's answers my questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Yu.
All right. Thank you, Tim. No problem. I'll share the paper with you afterwards.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes, you can say it loud enough.
Actually, I'm a little bit curious about the readout. So for the northeast part, is often regarded as a functional economic region. I think there are kind of subtle differences. So the Liaoning province, which I think has a densest high-speed HSR network, but the coefficient is significant. So I'm kind of curious because it's kind of counterintuitive.
Even Liaoning province has a what? Has a relatively high density of HSR stations, right?
Yeah, but the coefficient is significant, especially comparing with the other two provinces in northeast parts of China.
Liaoning province is, but it actually is indeed quite dense in terms of HSR stations. Thank you for the question, by the way. Well, you're asking why it is more significant, right? Why it has more significant counties than the other two northeastern provinces? Like this is, let me see, this is the Liaoning, right? Liaoning here. Yes. Why it has more significant than Jining and Heilongjiang, right? Here, that's it. That's the question. As a matter of fact, we found out this is actually in the middle. If you check their this is bird flying. Let's use the road network here. It's in the middle. We do not really explore into that detail why Liaoning province alone would be having a relatively higher impact. It might be Liaoning province is more more relying on infrastructure development, or it might be because Liaoning province also had a better base of infrastructure construction there. So infrastructure's contribution to economic development often is higher in Liaoning province. But that is a very good question. Our model does not really reveal that kind of detailed information. Well, we do not really have time to go to that particular regard of why this particular city or county will have a specific coefficient pattern. We did not go to that route, but I think this is a valid question here. On the overall, as you can see, not only Liaoning province, but also Tianjin, Beijing also relies heavily on the accessibility to the HSR system for its economic development, except for the northern part of Beijing, as you can see for the transportation here. It is a general pattern that this particular method intends to reveal that the in general, the more advanced, more developed regions oftentimes relies less than infrastructure investment directly. Well, relies less directly on it. Does not mean it does not have an impact. It does. It definitely does have an impact. As a matter of fact, one of the suggestions I get from the reviewer back is that I should do an interaction term between the HSR impact and the fixed asset investment. I should do that. Well, actually, I did that, and you know what? The result is not surprising at all. Indeed, it is very significant. The interaction is significant, which is not surprising. But when I put an interaction term in the model, it will eventually and ultimately come about to the model structure and makes the model's explainability less powerful than if I separate them. And especially when I found there is no significant multicollinearity between these two variables, the accessibility to HSR and the fixed asset investment. I found that there's no multicollinearity, no interaction, no correlation between these two. So putting an interaction term is sometimes a very fancy way to do. Econometricians like to do that, but it is also a relatively risky way to do because we might not have enough statistical power to actually distinguish between the main effect, the individual variables effect, and the interaction effect. If we put them all together, we might muddy the water. So we eventually choose not to do. We eventually choose not to do that. So to address your question, I think this is a very good question regarding why Liaoning province has all significant coefficients. It is still possible. Like I said, there are a variety of other reasons. Liaoning province might have a strong infrastructure, and the strong infrastructure basis might be one of the reasons why Liaoning province has developing its economy faster in the northeastern three provinces. And newly constructed HSR system becomes a new booster for its local economic development. And also, if you compare the numbers, the shades, it is significant and it's increasing the local development, but this increasing effect is less than the less developed region still. But I hope I addressed your question.
I think you have, and thank you very much for your talk, Dr. Yu.
All right.
I need to wrap up the colloquium, but I know that there's some people who want to talk to you about your models. I already see. Take a look at the chat that some people have written for you in terms of wanting to get your models and your code. So I think you intrigued a lot of ideas here.
I hope, yes.
So I want to let the colloquium people know that next week our speaker is Dr. Corey Matchis, and she is going to be talking about her work with mentoring diverse two-year college students in geoscience research during GeoPaths, which is a program she has. So thank you all for coming, and see you next week.